Now, ahead of his visit to India, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Washington is prepared to supply India with as much energy as it is willing to purchase. He described India as a great ally and partner and stressed the importance of stronger cooperation between the two countries. Rubio's remarks come amid concerns over global energy supplies following the ongoing US-Iran conflict. The global energy crisis born from the toxic intersection of President Donald Trump's protectionist trade policy and the subsequent outbreak of US-Iran-Israel war, the Operation Epic Fury that we know of, has hit India with unique severity. As an economy reliant on the Persian Gulf for over 80% of its oil and a vast portion of its LNG, India became a primary collateral casualty of the conflict. Let's take a look at the timeline of the energy conundrum, what Trump has unleashed. Let's talk about the global tariff disruptions here to begin with. Between April and August 2025, it's been a 10% flat policy. Trump administration heavily increased bilateral tariffs on China, the European Union and Japan. Then February 2026, again there was 10% tariff realignment. Following a US Supreme Court ruling, Trump replaced variable country tariffs with 10% global flat tariffs. Then let's discuss how it impacted India. The flat framework dropped the effective US tariff rate on Indian goods down to 8.3%. February 2026, China remained at a steep 23.1%, giving a brief silver lining for Indian exporters. Then in between February, sometime in the middle of February this year, there was a collapse of the Oman talks, and back-channel nuclear diplomacy with Iran brokered by Oman fell completely apart. Collapse of the Oman talks, Trump publicly stated he was not thrilled with the draft terms, closing the door on a diplomatic solution. Moving ahead, the end of February saw the outbreak of the war. Brent crude immediately surged by over 10%. Prices jumped to $80 to $82 per barrel within 48 hours. That was in the end of February. Then between 2nd and 4th of March, there was a total blockade. The IRGC officially declared the Strait of Hormuz closed to all traffic. 2nd and 4th of March, there was a total blockade. IRGC also cut off the passage of 20% of global oil. Commercial tankers to India were also halted. Then on the 6th of March, the Qatar declaration for Qatar declared a force majeure. Stranded by the blockade, Qatar Energy declared force majeure on its export contracts. Another major turning point was the severe infrastructure strikes. Global crude prices breached $100 per barrel on 8th of March for the first time in 4 years. Storage facilities in Kuwait, Iraq and the UAE were filled to capacity. Oil companies were forced to shut in extraction wells. Up to 10 million barrels per day erased from the market, all on that day. Qatar's Ras Laffan LNG infrastructure was also struck by Iran in the course of the war. Then on the 18th of March, again there were strikes on the infrastructure, and Qatar's Ras Laffan LNG infrastructure was struck. 17% of Qatar's LNG processing infrastructure was completely destroyed. 17%. 8th of March, Asian LNG spot prices skyrocketed by over 140%. Intense panic buying triggered across Asian markets, including in India. Pak-mediated conditional 2-week ceasefire was declared then on the 8th of April. Commercial shipping traffic remained still depressed. Let's take a look at how it has impacted the market in India, the domestic fallout of the global tariff disruption. India's imported crude oil basket surged past $126 per barrel at its peak, heading toward $140. Government slashed domestic petrol and diesel excise duties by 10 rupees per litre to safeguard the consumers. Indian rupee plummeted to a historic low of 94.79 against the US dollar. So those are how we've seen the impact of the global tariff disruptions and Trump's policy through the course of the war. Let's discuss this with senior economist Rajat Mishra, who is now joining us. Rajat, thank you very much for speaking to us. We've already seen fuel prices being hiked 2 times in the past week. Are we looking at a further surge, and what do you think is the government at right now to protect consumers' interests, because signs are pointing towards an inflation?
Right, thank you. This is very much needed at this particular juncture. You are very right when you are saying that at the next juncture to see higher prices. The most important thing is not that we are seeing $110, $115 or $120 per barrel at this point. The major point is the average, which were earlier $60 to $65 per barrel, will now be shifted to at least 80 to 85. And it can be as high as 95 average. This is a problem which India will face for a long period of time. Obviously, rupee depreciation is making things harder for us. Current account deficit and overall export deficit scenario will create further trouble for Indian rupee. In this situation, what India has been trying is diversification of its energy sources. So you must have heard earlier that Prime Minister has mentioned that we are now getting oil from more than 40 countries. That is a good initiative. However, majority of these countries are only giving us very little amount of oil and food. In this situation, USA is definitely a very big supplier. And as geopolitical situations are changing, earlier we were getting a lot of our energy supply from Russia, which is depleting now, and US can become a major source. Under US and India FTA or the trade agreement also, we have already promised, I think, a good number of investment there. If that investment is happening in the energy sector, it is eventually going to benefit India also from technology perspective as well as the stability of energy resources. However, the costing of this, that is the prices of oil, prices of gas which US will supply, will be much higher in comparison to Gulf countries. So that is a challenge which we have to face. However, for diversification purpose, for stability of sources, for trust building, and also if you incorporate UAE's promise of building SPR, Strategic Petroleum Reserve in India, this is a very, very good sign which we can.
All right, Mr. Mishra, thank you very much for joining us on this. And with that, we're getting some more